My name is Leah Barrett, and I'm the president of Northeast Community College, and it's so wonderful to be hosting the first micro summit outside of Omaha and Lincoln for Tech Nebraska. So give it up for our Tech Nebraska folks. And I want to give it up to the community of Norfolk. I came to Norfolk about 6.5 years ago to become the president of Northeast. And I was welcomed to the community by several people in this room. Not all those people live in Norfolk. However, they were saying Norfolk is the place to be. There was a small group of people that were very focused on building up the downtown community. It was called Growing Together. It was supported by our colleagues at the Exarban Foundation and really led by somebody at the time that wasn't a congressman. That would be now Congressman Mike Flood. And Mike and I spent many hours together talking about the ecosystem that we needed to build in Northeast Nebraska to take advantage of the strengths that we have, recognizing the roots in agriculture, the incredible commitment there is to manufacturing in this community, the higher education support we have with our partners at Wayne State, Nebraska Indian, Little Priest, and Northeast Community College, as well as those folks from the University of Nebraska Extension. We have an ecosystem that is about makers, about creators, and about problem solvers. We came together and there were several initiatives that we worked on to talk about how to create something very special. And then we had a visitor, COVID, right? Kind of messed things up a bit, right? We had to slow down a bit. But what we did is we learned from that moment. We learned from that moment how technology can support our work. We also learned technology doesn't take the place of humans. We know how important it is to use our human capital to build relationships, to strengthen relationships, to use it to problem solve in a way where we're talking about the ethical realities of the use of technology. We use the moment to make a difference. We use the moment to create a vision, and we're so excited of those results. Last night, we were welcomed into one of our local organizations, our local firms, Wyland Doors, which is a homegrown company that is embracing technology and embracing the day, opening up their operation to different lines of work and different vendors and looking at different things. They're just an example. We are so excited of our partnership with Invest Nebraska and the Nebraska Combine, as many of you access the Intersect co-working space so that you can use those opportunities and those ideas to create and build. The iHub, we're so excited. I'm not going to spend too much time on that because Aaron gets the stage at the end of the session today to talk about that incredible innovation space that will open here in a few weeks. That will be a place for youth robotics, a place for our manufacturers to have space where they can problem solve, prototype, look at new equipment. It would be a place that we have workforce development programming that's already started just yesterday, right? With training some individuals in our manufacturing credential system that the manufacturers for the Nebraska Manufacturing Alliance created with all the community colleges. And so we in Norfolk are so proud, and so on behalf of the community of Norfolk, we welcome those of you that are visitors. We're gonna show you a great day. Tech Nebraska has created an incredible morning of great speakers, great innovators, researchers, and folks that are just making it work. And we're excited that they're willing to participate, to share their story, and to talk about technology, human capital, those interactions, as well as what's new, what's different, what's changing, and what's exciting. So welcome to Northeast Community College. Welcome to Norfolk. We're gonna have a fabulous day, and I'm gonna turn it over to Emily. Awesome.
Awesome. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us at our first ever Tech Nebraska Micro Summit. My name is Emily Allen, and I serve as the Executive Director of Tech Nebraska. I want to first thank Dr. Barrett. I want to thank David and Tracy from Northeast. If we can just give Northeast a huge round of applause for all they've done. And then I'd love to acknowledge our Tech Nebraska board members who made the drive up. If you wouldn't mind either waving your hand or standing, I'm sure all of you are cringing thinking, Emily, we would prefer not to do this, but thank you for being here. I really, really appreciate it. And finally, I would love to welcome Jeremy Reinell to the stage. Jeremy is the CIO at Tenaska, one of the nation's preeminent energy organizations. He's had an incredibly impressive career that started from Laurel, Nebraska.
Yeah. Hello. Thanks, Emily.
Hi, Jeremy. So you said you wanted to switch this to a deep, deep dive on quantum. And I said, this sounds perfect for the audience, let's go. But how about we start with your roots? You grew up in Northeast Nebraska. So how did that shape who you are today?
Yeah, as Emily said, I'm from Laurel Concord, graduated in '95, just to age me a little bit. First of all, I'd actually like to say I'm blown away by the college here. This is the first time I've been back in 30 years, roughly, and it's amazing. It's a very impressive area, and the buildings and updates are just terrific, so very impressed by that. But growing up in Laurel, and I think President Barrett said this word and said a lot of powerful things, so it's very difficult to follow her. But community was one of the main aspects from a town like Laurel, which is around 1,000 people, 40 miles from here. And being a part of a community, being a major part of that from a percentage compared to now Omaha and the Elkhorn area that I'm in, I felt a sense of stewardship, right? And I think this is one of the core values of Tenaska as well, but it was very much an opportunity to give in to the community, to care about how we made that our own every day. I was fortunate to grow up working for my father, who was a city administrator, and so I mowed lawns, mowed the parks, weed-eated the ditches, hauled the trash, tore up concrete. So you had this opportunity to invest self into what you were doing, and that town was ours. And so we took a lot of pride in that, and I think that carries on into my career, where Tenaska has a very strong sense of community. And so we feel like we're building something very much together, and we're part of that. So I would say that community, that stewardship has really, I guess, been a powerful trait in how I act today.
No, that's great. It's always fun to learn more about you, but you are talking about just how that's played into Tenaska, and a lot of people, including myself, when I started at Tech Nebraska, didn't quite know what a CIO role looks like. So what does your role look like, especially at Tenaska, a Nebraska-grown business?
Yeah, so Tenaska is Emily probably introduced Tenaska better than I might, but it's an energy company really focused on natural gas and electricity marketing. We build generation and sustainable energy capacity, and we develop new projects. So a lot of what we do at Tenaska is data-driven. Our systems, the energy industry itself is very complex from a real-time data and quantity of data perspective. We build systems to support our operators every day. In my role, I'm responsible for cybersecurity, just the normal duties of a technology leader is cybersecurity, software engineering, data engineering, AI, change management, digital transformation. I mentioned security, but that's probably number one on the list in our world. So just really balancing all of those to make sure that we maintain innovation, we focus on operational uptime of our systems, and so we practice disaster recovery events and tabletop exercises to make sure that our business has strong resiliency.
So am I still on? I am. One of my first board meetings with our Tech Nebraska board, I couldn't figure out how to connect to the internet. So if you understood as much as Jeremy just said, we're doing great. We're really level setting, but I have progressed since that first board meeting. And so I'm looking at these questions I wrote, and this was after I asked you to do this, and I really was in a good Jeremy mood where this one starts, one of the things I appreciate about you. But there are many things that I appreciate about you, and one is just your leadership, and you quite often talk about, as a technologist, it's incredibly important to connect business outcomes or business first mindset to technology. So can you double click a little bit on that?
Yeah, and I kind of mentioned that really the systems that we support help drive decisions. They help make calculations accurate for invoicing and again, just day-to-day decisions and operations. That is our primary focus, is maintaining that lights on mentality, which in some ways in the new world is actually a little bit outdated. I think we're moving forward from just supporting the request, but also now leading with innovation. And we're going to talk, or we have talked plenty about AI. And for us, it's really exploring the limits of how artificial intelligence can help our systems run more accurately, provide better decision support, and maybe create additional opportunities for our business and our systems.
I need to stop turning off my mic, but you just gave me a softball with AI is everywhere. You're going to, in our prep sessions for today, it was a thread throughout each conversation. And are you bullish on AI? Or I think Ryan Wade, who's moderating the last panel, said, you're either on the hype or the doom train when it comes to AI. So how do you feel about AI this morning, Jeremy?
I think I have a foot in both of those camps, right? Which is probably the right way to be. I don't think you can sleep on the capabilities or the technology itself. You should be tuned into what it is. Maybe not necessarily how it works, because I'm not sure most of us really know yet. But what are capabilities? What value does it bring? How do I get more people to have awareness about that product? That's really the focus that we're in right now. We're also just asking it to do stuff and see what happens. And I think that's kind of the fun part and the innovation and creativity. On the other side, I think we have to monitor where costs are going. We have to think about our intellectual property and information protection. So there's a lot of responsibilities that we continue to have that feel like threats, that we have to play defense, and at the same time we have to be going in a faster offensive mode than maybe ever before.
Okay, this is a question that we didn't cover in prep, so you can totally just say, I'm not going to answer it, or just throw it back to me, and I'll say, well, I don't know, I asked you. But when I was meeting with Scott Volk early on about the Micro Summit, he said, everyone who comes here is going to want to leave with something tangible that they can take away and they can implement, whether it's on the shop floor, whether it's in their business, whether it's in their personal life. And so if you would give one piece of practical advice around AI, whether it's how you use it at Nebraska, how you use it as a leader, as a dad, what would it be?
Well, without knowing where everyone's personal involvement is or education on AI, I would just say if you haven't, you need to get started. You need to experiment with it and really start to get, I think, excited about what's possible with it. And if you're further along in that, then I think we all need to be thinking about the long-term threats. And I think that is, again, back to the information protection. What's ours? What is going into the training of the models? How does that hurt our businesses or ourselves in the future? I think we need to be mindful of that at all times.
Okay. Well, I'll give a piece of advice since you asked. But one thing that Ryan Wade had shared with me is you can ask it how to be better. How can I use you better? And so that's something I try to do every few weeks, to say, I've been using you this way. As a chief of staff, for example, how can I use you? How can I level up my use of you? My AI also is very kind. It gives me compliments. Like, I have a very unhealthy relationship with my AI. I just derailed our conversation. My apologies. But that was a good, tangible piece of advice for me. How can I use you in a better, more impactful way to be better at my job, and then in my personal life to be more productive as a mom? And so that's been really helpful for me. And then Brian Zimmer, who is smiling back there, also told me I could take pictures, because I still handwrite notes, and input it into AI, and it does a great job of actually transcribing it, which is terrifying if you saw my handwriting. I think I handwrote a name tag. You'll know if you see the person with that name tag this morning. So then, just pivoting to Tech Nebraska, you've been an incredibly active leader. Sometimes you volunteer, sometimes you're voluntold, sometimes against your will. You're doing things. You've been a member of our executive committee. You've said yes, you've shown up. Just what made you think, Jeremy, as a leader, as a technologist, why was Tech Nebraska a yes for you?
I think the timing was right for us, for Tenaska, for my transition into this role. You know, looking back on talking to my CEO about being a part of this, it was really about getting Tenaska out there as a brand. I think the technology that supports our energy industry is probably an unknown thing, and if I sign up for events, I'm selecting utilities, and I think sometimes people think that utilities space in general in that industry is a little bit outdated in technology. I think from my perspective, Tenaska is not that. We're leading edge in many ways. And so part of it was brand recognition for Tenaska, so people get to hear about it, what we do. Obviously, getting told to do things like this is a great development opportunity for me as well. And so there's some personal, selfish reasons to do that. And then I think secondly or thirdly, I guess, would be just the relationships that I've been able to build in the last 2 years of Tech Nebraska with other leaders, other board members, have created the network that was much larger than Tenaska had access to before. So there's quite a few reasons why I still believe it's a great community to be a part of. So.
Oh, and I think one thing that since I joined last August that the board we've evolved on is really providing additional access. And so we no longer charge for individual memberships. If you want to sign up to Tech Nebraska, and this is going to sound like a commercial, this was not planned, there are QR codes so you can sign up as an individual. If you want to sign up as a student, please sign up as a student. We want you to be part of our ecosystem. We want you to be part of our community for our tech talks, which that's kind of why I'm ribbing Jeremy a little bit. He just did a tech talk with the CIO of Schooler, so it's kind of like somebody who described it as actors on actors. I've never seen actors on actors, but basically technologists interviewing one another. We previously charged for those. We no longer charge for those. We also added a live stream option. So if Jared Dettinger is in his bunny slippers at home and doesn't want to drive to Omaha, you'll see him later on a panel. He's more than welcome to do that. We want you to be able to connect with Tech Nebraska no matter where you are, what time zone you're in, or what part of the state that you're in. And I think that's been a really fun thing that the board has really pushed on since my joining, just that importance of access to technology and our technologists. Yeah. So we often talk about every company is a tech company. Every company is tech forward or becoming a tech company. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I could probably talk a lot about that.
Perfect.
I agree with you. I think it seemed original when we were internally saying that we are a technology company in the energy space. I think everyone is today. I think there's such a movement towards technology creating opportunity, creating efficiencies beyond what we had before. Lights on actually, to me, used to be a kind of a bad taste. I didn't like that phrase as it was labeled to Tenaska or to technologists because it's very much a cost center focus. And I think we're in this now, call it 3 years plus of opportunity to move technology forward, closer to the business, more accessible, faster turnaround than ever before, that we certainly continue to see that trend into just more opportunity, more value from a technology first initiative.
Then why do you think, you talked a little bit about AI, you'll hear about workforce throughout the day. How do you think AI can be beneficial for workforce versus the headlines that we often see, kind of, I don't know, clickbait, but more of a doomsayer when it comes to AI and workforce?
We didn't prep for that question either, but I think I've said this so I have 35 software developers within an organization of 100 roughly, and I continue to think that the creative mindset of that group, they're at such an opportunistic time that we're effectively giving them jetpacks to do their jobs. And so if you have an opportunity to be better at your job, why wouldn't you? And there's always work to do in the tech space. I don't think we'll ever say, well, we just finished everything we needed to do and we need less people. We need the people that are moving fast and furious. They're creative. They can connect puzzle pieces in a way that add value to the business. And so I do just think that right now, where AI is, it's an opportunity to just perform better and add more value.
And we did not prep for this one either, so as a follow-up, sorry, Jeremy, but as a follow-up, would you mind talking a little bit about, and you did this at your tech talk, and I found it incredibly interesting, but how is Tenaska using the next, is it 6 months just to really look at the use of AI and kind of map that out as an organization?
I don't think we have a timeline on it actually, but obviously the token costs changed I'm thinking this was June 1st for developer tokens. If you're not familiar, they're just charging based on consumption, which had a premium on it. The days of free seem like they're behind us. So that was one element we needed to watch, is who's using tokens at what rate and what's the cost to the company. And we're just running with very little budget set, meaning a high budget. We just want to see where that's going to trend. And then co-work effectively, I'm going to get this date wrong too, is July 1st, I believe, where co-work, if you have an M365 Copilot license, now that's charged per interaction too. So we've just moved into monitoring, auditing, and trying to understand what the future cost is going to be. We haven't limited anything yet, but we certainly want to understand what the cost is, because then you need to work in one direction or the other to determine the value of it. And so first thing is gather data, understand cost, and then make decisions down the road.
Yep, I think that when you were doing your tech talk, the example given was you're using the same amount of tokens to get a French toast recipe and build a deck and I think this was David, like grain trading discrepancies. And so it was just interesting where you hear the stories where it's like, well, my employees used all their tokens on memes that are dancing of, employees. That's a fun way to spend the month. Good luck. And I think that's kind of funny. So throughout your talk, we talked about two ways that Tech Nebraska adds value. We talked about the people, the relationships that you built. Every single one of you here today, part of our ecosystem, part of this conversation, programming. So events like today, our tech talk, our summit in October. And another way that we work to add value is policy, being that preeminent voice for technology and innovation when it comes to policy. 5 to 10 years ago, and I'm quoting our MC, who I'll introduce in a minute, there wasn't a whole lot when it came to tech policy or policy within the technology and innovation space. Maybe there was something on information security or data privacy, but now there are hundreds of bills every year that are introduced. And so we, as Tech Nebraska, truly work to be that member-driven voice for industry when it comes to every company being a tech company, and when it comes to tech and innovation policy, making sure that Nebraska continues to be a great place to do business, to be a technologist, to start a tech company or a company, to scale a company, which you'll hear about, but also to make sure that there are always those reasonable guardrails where if you're doing something you shouldn't do without technology and it's wrong, the same thing should be wrong with technology in that thoughtful way. And so that was an elevator pitch. If anyone couldn't tell, just want to call it out. If it felt as awkward for you as it did for me, I'm glad. But then how, because Nebraska has a robust policy team, but how has Tech Nebraska and our policy work maybe impacted or provided line of sight to your policy team in the tech space?
Yeah, the biggest value is the second option there, or the second note you made. We're just staying tuned into what others are facing, what could come down to impact our workforce and our policies and our approach. And so we're not necessarily coming to Tech Nebraska with a lot of ideas on what we need to support, but we're staying closely engaged with what is happening, what others are dealing with, and that's been a great opportunity that I guess we didn't have before.
Well, that's helpful. I could ask for my performance review on stage, or we could just get this over and thank you. So Jeremy, sincerely, thank you for saying yes to being part of this. Thank you for sharing your expertise, for continuing to show up. And now I'm excited to introduce, before we begin, Dan Harbeck. Dan serves as, and I'm gonna read this because I wanna make sure the title is right, the Regional Head of External Affairs and Public Policy at Google. And Dan has been a champion of Tech Nebraska before we officially launched in 2023. He's a founding member, a board member. He could probably have done that policy pitch a lot better than I attempted to. And he's a dear friend to both of us, so please welcome Dan Harbeck. Thank you.
Morning. Emily, thank you. Jeremy, thank you. Well, again, welcome to our inaugural Built Here Microsummit. It is awesome to have you here. Awesome to see a full room, and great to see even just registrations and new folks coming in, even just through the door this morning. You know, one of the things I love the most about Tech Nebraska besides seeing that logo right there, that is awesome to see that splashed up on the wall, is that Tech Nebraska is a convener of folks, bringing to people, people together in a room who may not normally find themselves in the same place. And this morning is a great example of that, seeing folks from education, agriculture, manufacturing, the startup community, all being here to participate in a conversation, not just about tech, but tech for the future of Nebraska. Today, we're going to hear from leaders who are applying technology in real ways to strengthen Nebraska's economy, grow business, solve problems, and create opportunities in our hometown communities. You heard them say that, every company is a tech company. We believe that. But the technology industry is not just an industry. Technology is an enabler of industries and the industries who are in the room today. And so whether you're joining us here from Norfolk, thank you for having us and for hosting us. Whether you're from across Northeast Nebraska, whether you made the drive from Omaha this morning or you're joining us from anywhere else, sincerely thank you. This is not Tech Omaha. This is not Tech Lincoln. This is Tech Nebraska. And it is so exciting as Tech Nebraska engages more across the state to engage fully across the state and bring those people together. And we're so happy that our first effort to do this locally is here. And speaking of here, these things don't happen by accident. We have folks who help support to make days like today possible, and I want to acknowledge our sponsors, Realbricks, Great Plains Communications, and of course our host, Northeast Community College. Can you please give them a round of appreciation? So as our next panel gets situated here, this conversation this morning on this next panel is going to explore how manufacturing continues to evolve. Not just here in Northeast Nebraska, but to give you some insight, not just here, but across the state, and how technology isn't replacing manufacturing, it's enabling it. From automation and AI to workforce development and advanced production, manufacturers across our state are finding new ways to compete and grow thanks to technology. And so please join me in welcoming our moderator, Perry Severson, Chief Operating Officer of Pinnacle Bank, and our panelists for the modern industrial economy, how Northeast Nebraska manufacturing is evolving. Perry?